Hello everyone and welcome to today's guide. We are going to be talking about Tigra and Jabari in Fintech's challenge that is part of the recent CCP challenges that all came out. This is basically you have to use just these two champs of any rarity and get through the final quest in EOP, which is all 16 of the bosses back to back followed by a Thanos boss. It is one of the more difficult challenges here. And I will say that I did go through it maybe 2 weeks ago now, and I have footage from the entire thing, so you will see some footage in the background as I go over each of these fights. We're going to break down every single fight as we go through this. And I do want to just say that I am a pretty average Tigra player, and I've literally never played Jabari, except for maybe like 2 or 3 war fights ever. So I am going to be doing this guide through the perspective of somebody that is less experienced with both of these characters. I'm certainly not a ninja with Tigra like Fintech and so many other people are out there. So I'm going to be giving you sort of the bare minimum tips for you to get through it with the least amount of items. Now, let's first talk about the champions that I have, what rank they are, and what SIGs they are. My Tigra, I have recently ascended, so she is fully rank 5 ascended, and she is also SIG 200. Now, I don't necessarily think that the rank is super important. If she's rank 4 or 5, she can still do this content, especially with boosts. But I do think that the SIG 200 is very, very important. If you read her SIG ability, it's essentially you get the senses for longer. And basically, if you can do more damage by having both senses up, that is just generally better. So the higher the SIG, the better for her. Jabari, on the other hand, I only used for 4 of the fights. So in my perspective, since I only have the 6-star, I think that rank 4 should be plenty. Rank 3 might be pushing it a little bit, but I will say if you have the 7-star, the awakening is not super huge for her. So I would prefer using a 7-star over a 6-star. However, if she is awakened, you do have access to that counter punch. I didn't end up using it too often as I was doing this challenge, but do note that every 50 SIGs on her gives her a new benefit. So what I did, mine was SIG 20. I just threw 30 stones in her. She was SIG 50 and that was plenty. I don't think you need to go above 50 unless if she's close enough to 100. Now, in terms of masteries, I definitely would not use the recoil masteries here because both of them are going to need to be spamming a lot of specials. That's just going to be a lot of health down the drain with recoil. So I would just use your basic offensive mastery setup. The one thing that I highly recommend is inequity. Both of these champions, especially Tigra with all of her ruptures, get a lot of debuffs, and you are essentially adding effective health to your champions by reducing the attack of the opponents. So inequity is huge here. And additionally, there is one mastery swap that we're going to talk about when we get to Warlock. We'll discuss that when it's time. Now, in terms of boosts, I do recommend boosting for this. You might as well, unless if you need them for war, you can use boosts. And I do think that Mystic Power Backs are a decent idea, at least for some of the fights for Tigra. I personally didn't use them. And the one thing to note is that a lot of her damage on the special 2 is the red damage, and Power Backs do not affect how much power you get back off of that. It's only on the hit damage, so they may not be as powerful as you think they are, but you might as well throw them on if you have them, right? Especially against Warlock, this can make a big difference if you have power backs. All right, so we're going to get into the fight breakdowns now, but before we do so, I just want to give a huge shout out to my friend Cat Murdock, who designed the thumbnail for this video, and it just came out absolutely amazing. If you don't know her, she makes incredible infographics and art for this community. Follow her on Twitter, go to her Etsy, also contribute to her Patreon. I cannot endorse her enough. Recently, her profile picture of Medusa made it into the game. I am currently rocking this profile picture and will be for a long time. So huge thank you to my friend Kat for making this amazing thumbnail. I thought it would be a special occasion with the Women of Power event that just came out to feature some of her art on the thumbnail, and I'm just so pumped about that aspect of this video. So even before you watch the guide, just check out that thumbnail because it is so cool. And once again, thank you, Kat. Thanks for your friendship and for your amazing art. So let's get into it. All right, so first off, we have Hercules. Of note, there is Force of Will, which means that you will not have access to your Neutralize. This means it's going to be a little tough to keep your senses up, and also you won't be able to stop the unblockable and indestructible buffs. My suggestion here is to spam the special 1 to keep your senses up for as long as possible, and only throw the special 2 if it absolutely lines up. You can punish his heavy and both of his special attacks relatively easily because they are melee hits. Just work on the spacing and you should be fine. Now the node that is called Shake and Bake is not a huge issue because you will be constantly knocking him down, especially if you're spamming special 1s, so that should mean the concussions won't fall on you that often. Brute Force is also not a huge issue because you should be playing pretty aggressive here, spamming heavies in the corner and punishing the specials as we talked about. If you can, try to land intercepts before throwing your specials to activate the Foresight node. Heavies will count as an intercept if he's dashing towards you. And the last thing I'll say about this, because it's the first fight and you have class advantage and it's one of the easier ones, I would recommend going in until you get a solo, because this should be one that you can practice in solo, and then you can at least start the event without having used any revives. Next up we have Havok. Now there's going to be some champions on this spread here that I'm going to recommend dueling with a low ranked Tigra before jumping in, and he is definitely one. Now for the most part this is just a big Havok, and traditionally Havok is a fight that Tigra can absolutely nuke, but you do need to know his animations. Now when you punish the heavy, it is quite possible to do it to interrupt it, but depending on where you are next to him, you may need to release the heavy a little bit later. What I would highly recommend is just literally using your eyes and seeing when he's sort of like midway to you from the second jump and then releasing, because it is possible to release too early or too late and to get clipped. So do practice the heavy punish. It's not that hard, but it is something you just need to be aware of. And then if you're brave, you can learn the special 2 punish. The way that this works is you sort of do some shallow dashbacks and then you hold down the heavy, and when he throws the big beam at you, you have to kind of release it at like the earliest possible moment so that you actually kind of miss through the beam, and then you can punish him that way. Now this isn't absolutely necessary in this fight. If you feel uncomfortable with that, I would recommend just dexing the special 2 and just punishing it with a medium. But if you can, it will add more damage, it'll give you more power, and you should be able to nuke it faster. You do definitely want to be using special 2s on this one, and you want to have as many ruptures as possible. The way Tigra works, as you are punishing with the heavies, you're getting little bursts of power, you're getting ruptures if both senses are up, and then when you release the special 2, depending on how many ruptures are on the champion, that's how much red damage you're going to do. So that's why you do want to get those punishes together so you can essentially nuke. Now a note about this, if you do land parries at the right times, you can get an armor up based on this node, and that might help you, because there are going to be times if you're just playing fast and loose that he may end up getting his debuffs and he can give a plasma detonate to you. However, if you have the armor, you should be good to go here. You just have to be careful, because when you do dex, it will do the buff synthesis and you'll actually lose the armor up. So overall, this is just a play Tigra against Havok matchup. I highly recommend dueling. You can nuke it down, land parries if you're aware enough to make sure that you avoid the plasma detonates, practice the special 2, and generally don't let him throw a special 1, and you should have a really good time. Next up we have Warlock, and I know a lot of people are kind of scared of this fight, but I will say it's a lot worse with the Mojo challenge than it is here. Using Tigra is actually a pretty good counter for this fight, especially, well, only because she has the Jabari synergy, which we'll get into in a minute. So first of all, I highly recommend taking willpower off. This is the only time, in my opinion, that you're going to need to swap masteries. So just clean up your defense tree, spec the points back in up to willpower, and then put willpower back on with inequity for the next fight. It's really not that expensive, and you really will be shooting yourself in the foot if you have willpower on. Now the reason this fight works at all is because of the Jabari synergy, which allows you to fully nullify buffs on unblockable hits. You have to get rid of this armor because otherwise you will not be able to crit and you will therefore not be able to do damage. The fight can be really annoying, but depending on your skill level, I would recommend going for special ones. It's just easier to get 1 bar of power, line things up, than to make it all the way up to special 2 and then start dancing. Even though the special 2 is going to do more damage, I feel like per bar of power you have more guaranteed success if you spam special ones. What you need to line up ideally is this: intercept first before throwing a special to get the guaranteed crit window up, then throw a special attack from a distance to get the unblockable, which is going to potentially remove the armor. The only thing is you have to watch out for his offensive ability accuracy reduction, which happens during the infection. So if you can do this outside of infection, all the better. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a roll of the dice. Your nullify may not work, but if you have the guaranteed crits and if there is no armor, then you should be in really good shape here, because of power shield, it's going to do a ton of damage even off of the special 1. Now, as I mentioned before, the best way to solo this is to use power back boosts and go for special 2s, but a more conservative way to do it, which I would recommend, is just throw special 1s. Like I said, per bar of power, you're doing more damage this way anyway, and if you're okay using a few revives, I think it's just easier to line up this way, and I would recommend doing it that way. So enjoy this fight. It is kind of fun when it works, but it can be frustrating, and it can also be one of those ones where you do like no damage and then die and you feel like you're wasting items. But it is sort of the first difficult fight on the path, and it definitely needs to be respected because of that. Next up, we have Nick Fury, and in my opinion, this is what I consider a play around node, which means literally any champion can go in there and do this fight. You just need to understand the nodes. So first off, blocked hits in general are bad. You're going to get disorients on you, and then the block damage is going to escalate, especially if he's in his second life. This could be really rough. Hitting his block will give you a bleed on yourself, which you can heal. So just do remember to put that willpower back on, because in this fight there are some debuffs that either do no damage or do just a tiny bit of damage, so willpower will definitely help. And what you want to do is the normal Nick Fury stuff. Push him to special 2, and then if you continually bait the special 2s, he will get to a point where he power locks himself. The key here is, if you really want to kind of cheese it, is to always have one of those small bleeds on you, because when there's a debuff on you, he will basically stay over 2 bars of power, and then he can spam a few of those special 2s in a row. You keep dexing them, it builds up the timer so that he power locks himself, and then you can do a ton of damage. But most importantly, I would say just stick to the normal Nick Fury things that you know how to do. Watch out for his tactical charges, push him to special 2, and know that you can likely neutralize his fury, which means the tactical charges will always stay in the single digits when they go up. And then also just remember that when he is above, I think, 5 tactical charges, he will prevent miss. So in general, you won't be able to do any fancy Tigra stuff here. You are still able to bait heavies to get the ruptures on him, but you won't be able to do anything fancy with his specials because you cannot miss. So in general, you just have to kind of manage his power and take a look at all the things I just talked about. It is not a perfect fight for Tigra, but like I said, this is one of those play around nodes, and it can go pretty well. I ended up dying early, and then my second try, I pushed him into the second life and took him pretty far down. So a lot of it comes down to AI and sort of your awareness in the fight, but overall it's not the hardest fight on the map, and it's just kind of a big Nick Fury with that extra power gain node, and you have to avoid blocked hits. So now we've made it to MODOK, and this ended up being the roughest fight for me. It requires a lot of patience, and the AI also needs to cooperate. Now, unless if there's some other strat out there that I didn't pick up on, the way I used Jabari was the following. What seemed to work best was to parry or re-parry, and then only throw 3 hits during the stun. Usually doing 3 light attacks was safe, or a medium if you can get it off. And then you just need to kind of allow time to get to the tranquility timer to reset both of your power bars. You can bait his special ones if you need, but you know, just by being patient and holding block, he generally might get into yellow bars of power, but then just not throw his special because of tranquility. The issues here are that if you throw a heavy, the down and out timer will show up. So basically heavies are bad. You have to just kind of do short combos like I said. And also because of obstinate charge, it forces you to reparry at times. So you have to be good at reparrying. And then finally hitting his block is very bad because of the brink node, I think it's called. There's something about on the brink. There is also powerful from afar. So now she does have some abilities that may be able to, with ability accuracy, get through the auto block, but it's not guaranteed. So it's not really dependable. That's why I suggest only hitting him when stunned, and then you can throw your special ones while stunned as well, and just kind of hope for some crits and bleeds and go for it. Now, I've heard some people getting this fight down a lot more efficiently and less painfully than I did, but overall it was pretty bad for me. And I also watched Karate Mike's stream, and I think he struggled not as badly as I did, but a little bit on his as well. So I do think this is one of the rougher fights, especially if you have a 6-star Jabari. But again, just kind of reparry, do short combos, let Tranquility reset. You will be taking block damage, but overall he will slowly go down, and it just comes down to like how many mistakes you make. If you bait a special one and miss, if he sort of turtles up and intercepts you with a light, or you know, if he goes unblockable, God forbid, then you could be in a little bit of trouble. Or if he like throws specials into your block. Those are the things that will end the fight early. Otherwise you just have to be super patient. As you can see in the video in the background, this is one of my longer tries, and you do just a tiny bit of damage, but he does eventually go down, and then you can just be done with MODOK. Next up is Blade, and this is another one where I highly recommend dueling with Tigra first. He has unblockable specials and also destructive feedback, so in general you have to find a way to punish the specials, and you also have to be very careful of blocked hits when destructive feedback is on. Now when baiting the special one, you can use a single light attack to push yourself a little bit closer to him, and then sort of duck under the stars and punish his special ones. This is a little bit easier in the corner, and the funny thing is I actually did practice this a lot. Like I even sent some of my friends some duel videos, like, yeah, I'm so ready for this fight, but I kind of choked when I got into it, so I probably needed even more practice. But at the end of the day, Tigra is just really good for this fight because her damage is so high, and generally you play her in a style where you're not taking a lot of blocked hits anyway. So even if you don't fully have it down, he will go down eventually. But again, I highly recommend practicing his animations, and just know that because of power lapse, he can sometimes have multiple specials back to back, so just be aware of that. Only bait the special one and watch out for destructive feedback, and you should be pretty good to go. Punishing the special ones with both senses up will also give you a little bit more power, so that means you can get to your special 2s a little bit more frequently, and just a few special 2s will be just like slicing through his health pool here, and you should be in good shape. So just be careful, and of course it's another sort of AI type fight. Watch out for the unblockable specials and destructive feedback, and you should be okay. Even if you make a couple mistakes, it may only cost you a revive or two. It's not the hardest fight in the world. Now we have Terrax, and this is one of the fights that was basically designed for Tigra. You have class advantage, she's really good against him in general, and there's nothing in this node set that's really going to stop her. You'll see in the clip in the background, I did end up getting the solo, but it was a super sloppy solo, so do check out some other clips on YouTube, notably from Fintech, on how to really nail this fight. The Made of Rubber node is there to help you. When you stack ruptures, you'll be taking less damage, and really the only node that can get you is the impending extortion. When he dips below a bar of power, a timer starts and he needs to fill the bar directly after that, otherwise you take a big burst of damage. And you know, the way the rock field works, it can be a little tricky to make this happen. The only other thing you need to be aware of is that and the special delivery node. So there may be a time where you have to throw a special one in order to avoid the special delivery degen, but other than that, it's just sort of a typical Terrax fight. You're punishing his heavy, you're punishing his specials, you're delivering giant special 2s, and the only sort of growing edge that I didn't do that you can maybe do is there's a way when you're fighting aggressive AI to dash back and immediately charge heavy to punish him. Fintech is really good at this. I have not learned how to do it, but there are some little tips and tricks on how to fight Terrax in general that I didn't do. You don't have to be fancy though. If you just do what I did, the nodes will help you get him down, and you should be absolutely fine. So enjoy the rest of the solo in the background, and that's Terrax for you. So this is the halfway point and we've made it to Dragonman. This is also a very good fight for Tigra. I think people used her in the original EOP. So first, make sure you never parry because it will cause an armor break to happen, and as you may know, you take direct damage when you do an armor break. So you do need to play this as if it's stun immune, but he is not stun immune. You can accidentally parry and get in trouble. Next, you can mostly control the unstoppable with your neutralize. However, sometimes if the AI doesn't play ball with you, one can slip through. So you do need to kind of keep your eyes out for the unstoppable. Next node, the unblockable from the escalating assault node. It's just another thing to watch out for. It can happen mid special attack, for example, but it does only occur on the single hit that is at you at that time. So you can actually block specials and punish them pretty easily if you're just avoiding that single unblockable hit. Maybe it's like a tail swing from him on the special one. And he does have very good animations for dealing with all the Tigra stuff. So if you've never fought a Dragonman with Tigra, I do think you should duel. I personally didn't. I remember like back in Gauntlet, I fought him with Tigra, so I'm pretty comfortable with the special one punish and the heavy punish and stuff like that. But again, if you've never done it, I would duel him because it's just a really good fight. For her, the neutralize can help you with the power gain as well as the unstoppable, and you know, you have high damage, you have neutralize. It's just a great kit for this fight. Just remember, don't parry, watch out for the unblockable. You should have a good time. Now we've made it to Peni Parker, and I'll be honest with you, I thought this was actually going to be a lot worse than it actually was. Aside from just being an annoying Peni Parker, there are a couple annoyances here. First of all, the close encounters node. Fortunately for Tigra though, you are often very close to her, so it's not as bad as it would be for some other champs. The other thing is there's a node that's going to make your stuns potentially be a little bit shorter, so you can't always rely on parry working. Now, landing unblockable specials is going to be your key to doing damage here, and you are going to have to kind of play around some of the nodes like the ones I just mentioned, and also you will get special locked every once in a while. Additionally, you have to be a little bit careful about getting a little bit too happy with chaining heavies in the corner, because if she has enough spider sense charges, you can very easily get auto blocked even with the heavy and then get power burned, which is just a bad time. I think this fight requires a little bit of regression and risk in order to be played well. So that means if she has fewer than 4 spider sense charges, you might want to try to punish some of her heavies with your heavy to just build up some of your damage and ruptures, but just know that you are taking a risk doing that. If she has over 4 charges, I wouldn't recommend doing that at all because you are going to get hit in the face. Now generally, you're going to be throwing special ones here. Like I said, they're unblockable, which helps, and they will be doing a solid amount of damage. This is just a difficult fight to solo because there's a lot of chip damage from blocked hits and the potential power burn and, you know, the degen from close encounters and things like that. If you can, I would recommend baiting Peni's special 2 and just fully blocking it. If you have Inequity Mastery, it's going to be a big plus here. And then also when she's close to you, you will regen a little bit. So the special 2 into block is actually not that harmful. Again, just be careful of chaining heavies in the corner because at some point you're going to run out of luck and she will auto block you. Otherwise, hit her block when you can, get the shield down, and then you can really do some big damage. Throw a special 2 if it makes sense, but for the most part with the special locks, I think special 1s are going to be your key here, and that's this fight. Definitely tough to solo, not as bad as I thought it would be with Tigra, and that is Peni Parker. The next fight is Ikaris, and she's actually really good for this fight, but there's just one interaction that you have to watch out for, and it's basically the unstoppable from the combo of the nodes called Immune Efficient Fury and Mighty Charge, and how that interacts with Fuel the Fire. Now these aren't nodes that we see that often, so let me explain. Mighty Charge makes them immune to debuffs when they're dashing in, and then there's another node that if they're immune to anything, they get a Fury effect, and then the third node is getting a Fury effect equals going passively unstoppable. So essentially, if you intercept with a special while the Mighty Charge is active, or I think maybe some hits of the heavy as well, and he's immune to debuffs, then he will get the Fury and go unstoppable. Now there is some ways when you play Tigra where you are going to be intercepting in this way, so you just have to be a little bit careful because she won't be able to deal with that unstoppable. It happened to me a couple times. As long as you play around that, the formula is basically don't parry, bait his heavies, punish with your heavy, bait his special 1, punish with your heavy, and repeat. you should be able to get off some massive special 2s as long as you don't accidentally trigger the unstoppable by intercepting at the wrong time. Now, his animations really lend themselves to being punished by heavies. In fact, when I played this way back with the original EOP, I used a much less ideal counter than Tigra to do this with all the heavy punishing. And so, in my opinion, having a champ that actually also benefits from the heavy punishing makes this an even better fight. Using an Ascended Tigra now was like 20,000 times better than using rank 3 unduped Professor X when he first came out. So because I had already sort of practiced these animations and there wasn't the Energize to worry about due to having my Neutralize up, this ended up being a pretty easy fight even though I didn't solo it. And yeah, just watch out for the Unstoppable and you should be good to go here. Now we've made it to Scorpion, and this is a Jabari fight. Now I remember way back in the day using Omega Sentinel for this, and the strat was heal to full, get to 3 bars of power, and just use basics to kill him. You will take 1 big burst of damage from the Beat the Buzzer node, but then you're good. So I actually started thinking that was the way that Jabari would work. You kind of cheese the node Beat the Buzzer by just like never filling bars of power. However, she does pretty legitimately counter this node with just her kit, especially with the cleanse. And with the power gain that you get, you have access to a lot of specials, so you can get to the hunt quickly. And so I suggest, if you want to play it super conservative, get to the special 3, but if you just kind of throw specials and play Scorpion like you would normally with Jabari, you may actually be in a lot better shape, and that's what I transitioned to doing eventually. So overall, the things to worry about, there's Languor. You take a big burst of damage if you hit 0 power, so you have to be careful of your power gain getting reversed, or if you throw a special with too little power, that can happen. And as I mentioned before, Beat the Buzzer, which you do take damage if you don't throw a special fast enough, so you are going to be trying to throw a lot of special ones. I think living in green bars of power and just throwing them when you have them is the way to go in this fight. Other than that, you should be basically fine. Just dodge his specials as best you can. Throw a lot of specials of your own. If you can line it up so that you get a lot of bleeds during the hunt and you can land a heavy, that's the way to stack the most damage for her. You can make use of the counter punch charge if she's awakened. And yeah, it's just, Jabari against a science champion that's putting debuffs on you, so you should have a pretty good time here. And so, I guess don't overthink it is sort of my bottom line here. It's just a good one for Jabari. The nodes don't really prevent her from doing a lot of damage, and you should be okay against the Scorpion using even a rank 4 Jabari. Alright, so we're kind of on the home stretch here. We've got Kraven next, and typically this has been a good fight for Mystics due to the Riot node, which gives unblockable and unstoppable buffs. So Tigra is really going to excel here. He does start with an unblockable buff, so just be careful. You won't be able to land that initial parry. Likely what happens is you'll knock him down with a special attack, you'll get the neutralize up, and then the unstoppable will not even appear. So that's kind of nice. And just note that it does have return policy, and a pretty beefy return policy at that. So when your Jabari synergy kicks in and you nullify any buffs while you're unblockable, then he will gain a burst of power. However, due to the fact that Matador is the only way that you gain power, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The way to play this fight, you mostly want to be punishing his special 2. It's not super easy to get with your heavy, so even if you just dash back and then dash back in, you should be good. Punish the special 2 and then throw your own specials that you get from Matador. Now if he does throw a special one, it's not the end of the world because you'll immediately shoot up to a bar of power from Matador, and then what I recommend is dashing right in, allowing only one of your mediums to hit, and then just throw that special one right away. It will disarm the trap on the field, and then you won't have to worry about getting rooted. The only other thing to be aware of is the defective defense node, so that means blocking is going to lead to large disorients, which really hurt, just like that Nick Fury node. So you do have to kind of play contactless, not be blocking a lot of hits here. And then if you can land special 2s at the right moment, that is by far your best source of damage. But also don't be scared to throw your special 1s when it makes sense. You want to be knocking him down a lot to encourage him to throw his specials, and with Matador you'll always have power after he throws one, so it becomes a little bit of a rhythm fight, and because you don't have to worry about the unstoppable at all, it's not too bad. So that's Kraven for you. Next up is Overseer, and there's definitely an argument here to use Jabari. However, in my opinion, his animations are so easy to punish with Tigra that I recommend just going in with her if she is the higher ranked of your two champions. The major problems with this fight is first the encroaching stun, and also the damage that you can take from abilities failing from the special concussions. Now, in a way, Neutralize is actually really good here because while he's immune to Nullify and Stagger, he is not immune to Neutralize, so if you're aggressive enough, he won't really benefit from the feats of power, which also means Rich Get Richer won't really be a thing. You'll mostly want to be doing normal Tigra things here, punish his heavy and punish his specials. Both of them are quite easy to do with your own heavy, and then just be aware of when the encroaching stun timer is about to end. You will want to be throwing your special 2s for the most damage. However, at times you may need to be managing your power in a way where the special ones are better, because as you might know, throwing a special 3 will not stop encroaching stun because the timer basically stops right before you throw it. So you do need to stick to special 1s and 2s. And then just know that because of the retaliation, which is really beefy on this guy, there will be some unavoidable damage. It's just part of the fight. And you also have heal blocks, so you can't just willpower heal it back. Last thing I'll recommend is if you don't have Limber 5 out of 5, I highly recommend it for this fight. I run it all the time, so it was just on. I think that even when I was fighting him, there was a few times that encroaching stun happened and Limber actually saved me from getting hit. So the effect of the encroaching stun is way minimized when you have Limber. It's just a good mastery in general for defense and offense, and this is a good use for it here. Next up is Crossbones, and this is the first fight that you absolutely have to use Jabari because it has Biohazard. And additionally, it has inflated egos, so the Neutralize and the Biohazard is going to just kill Tigra instantly without doing any damage. Now, Jabari's Cleanse will completely take care of Biohazard. You'll never have to worry about any debuff slipping through, so that absolutely takes care of that one node. And then Bane is here. This kind of requires a little bit of AI manipulation and power management. You're going to want to bait his special ones and his heavies, but also try not to take blocked hits at all because of the Vital Strikes node. This can regen off of the blocked hits pretty mightily due to how many furies he has when he hits your block. So aside from managing Bane, you can't do any damage if he doesn't have 3 or more buffs. But if you are basically baiting the special ones and he's purifying the bleeds that you're putting on him, it's really not that hard to maintain 3 buffs. You just won't be doing damage for like a couple combos and then you'll be good to go. I think for the most part, you don't even have to think about that node. So you want to be hitting his block, which will make him either throw heavies or specials, and then generally bait the special ones early. You know, you don't want to go to the last minute for the Bane timer, and that way you're going to have openings and you can keep control of that Bane timer. So if you have to only focus on one thing in this fight, I would say just focus on those Bane transfers and then Jabari will handle the rest. So we've made it to the final Tigra fight and it's Bishop, and this is another one. If you're not used to fighting bishops, it's a really good matchup for her, but I do encourage you to duel. If you duel Bishop, you will know that you basically have to prevent him from throwing special ones, and then after that it's just kind of a Tigra nuke fest. Now the timing on the heavy punish is you can do it after he throws the first hit and before the gun goes off, but you do need to be quick enough. And then the special 2, you can actually dash in after the first move and dash in with a medium, then you'll be right next to him while the gun is charging, and then you can release the heavy sort of like as the beam is coming at you, like at the sort of earliest possible second that it's safe, and then you'll be able to punish him. If you get those 2 moves down, you are good to go on this fight. There's nothing here that's going to stop Tigra. As I mentioned, the special 1 is always bad news because of the incinerates, so do your best to manage power by holding block and try to only bait special 2s. If he does throw a special 1, just get out of dodge and just wait out the timer. Doesn't matter if your senses fall off, you do not want to die, so just, you know, be passive and stay away from him. Other than that, you do need to keep track of the hurt locker node. This means you basically want to go special 1, special 2, special 1, special 2, etc. There's shock tether, which is going to punish you basically for a couple reasons, because you don't want him to get shocked as well, but as long as you're aggressive, that won't necessarily happen. And Tigra's style is of course very aggressive. Practice that in your duels. There's the meltdown timer, which is another thing to watch. If you're throwing enough specials fast fast enough, it won't be a problem, but you essentially need to throw your special before that little timer that's like reddish purple ends, otherwise you'll take damage. If you're being, again, very aggressive, you should be having very many specials to throw, as long as you alternate them for Hurt Locker. Lastly, the energy actuator node. This means that you're not getting combat power, but if you're holding block to bait his heavies for openings, you're generally going to be staying very close to him, and in my opinion, you are getting plenty of power, so it generally doesn't feel very different than if you were getting combat power through the normal means. So very typical fight here, Tigra versus Bishop, with just a few other elements in there, and it should go down fairly easily for you. So we finally made it to the final boss, 16 of these guys, and we're here. Now this Dormammu has buffed up, and the way Neutralize works, it can actually prevent buffs on yourself because of the way ability accuracy works. So Tigra here is a big no-no, and this is probably the second fight that needs Jabari, and for me the fourth time and final time that I use her. Now Jabari does suffer a little bit because he's bleed immune, but the majority of the damage from this fight comes from the no surrender node, which reduces degen on yourself, and then when you knock him down, it transfers the damage to Dormammu. Now, due to chip damage, a rank 4 Jabari will have a little bit of trouble soloing this fight, but it is one of those fights that most champions can kind of muscle through if you're careful and just expect to use a couple revives. You got to watch out for Footloose, which is happening after the specials. You get the Unstoppable and Evade. Fortunately, his specials are pretty long, especially the special 2, so the Footloose buffs don't even last that long after the animation finishes. He also has steady perseverance, so be aware of that at times where he will be stun immune, so you have to be careful getting your openings. Other than that, you just need to know that you need placebos on yourself to do any damage because it buffed up, and you're just going to want to knock him down a lot and time it for when you have degens on yourself, and then he'll slowly go down. Now, if you're comfortable with the special 2, you can bait it. If you don't love baiting it, try to just parry the first projectile at the start of it, or you can also kind of dash back just at the end. But like I said, go for that special 2. He also has power from the bursting up from Prey on the Weak, so that could mean like you could get in a cycle where he just keeps having special 1s and he keeps throwing them and you lose your rhythm. So that's why in general I recommend pushing him to special 2, and it might be the way to go to trigger Footloose even less, and then you don't have to spend that much time stalling. So it's not a super pleasant fight, but it is one of those ones where the degen puts in a lot of work and Jabari can absolutely get it done. So we're nearly done with the guide. I just want to quickly remind you on this Thanos, his 3 phases. Phase 1 can only throw special 1. He's got the thorns. You have to throw a special to deactivate the thorns. So make sure that when he throws a special, you have some power. Phase 2, inverted controls. I recommend just staying in inverted controls because you do more damage. If you land a big special 2 from Tigra during this phase, you can almost one-shot him into the next phase. Watch out for the fake projectiles. And the final phase is one of those typical Thanos, you have to intercept me nodes, otherwise you will die from a special 3. You can tank a few special 3s with your protection, and then just remember you need to throw a big special, preferably a special 3, when he is in one of those intercept windows, otherwise he's indestructible. So land your intercepts, build the 3 bars of power, and then during that intercept window throw the special 3 and he should go down in maybe 1 or 2 of those. Big tip on these Thanoses is that if you hold block and bait heavies, he often won't throw his special 1 or 2. So during those phases, you can let him be very passive and he will just stop gaining power, and you can do lots of fun Tiger things and get him down. Well, that's going to take us to the end of the guide. I gotta say, big shout out to Fintech for designing this challenge. I think it was very well thought out. It was difficult. It required me to rank up some new champions, and I love stuff like that. When it's content that forces you to rank up a champion that otherwise you wouldn't, there you have it. Now, Tigra and Jabari were both rank 3. Now, Tigra is the maxed out level that a 6-star can be, and Jabari's rank 4, and I got to use her in a meaningful way for pretty much the first time ever, and I really like stuff like that. So the rewards for this challenge are not super spicy, but it is a stepping stone to getting the champion selector at the end, and I do think it's worth doing. So hopefully this guide was helpful for you. Maybe if you were a little scared of doing this challenge, this showed you that even an average summoner like myself can do it. As long as you have a little bit of knowledge going into it, it's not that bad at all. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for checking out this video. Hit like, subscribe, share this video with your friends. Go subscribe to everything that Cat Murdock does as well to say thank you for this thumbnail and the great profile picture. That's going to do it for today. Have a good one, and I'll catch you in the next one.